Here's a video of a 5-inch gauge Great Western Railway Saint class locomotive that we've recently commissioned for her lucky new owner. An interesting engine, built as a batch of 4 by a professional model engineer from the Manchester area called Sid Rowlands, and interestingly painted by one of the big names of model engineering, Louis Raper, who lived in the same area and worked on quite a lot of Sid Rowlands engines for a company called Steam Age back in the day. This is a little video showing some of the controls. So here you can see the drain cocks on the front of the cylinders to try and get rid of some of the water as the steam goes into the cold cylinder. And there's a little lever on the footplate that you'll see Finn just flick closed to shut the drain cocks there, and there's no more steam coming out of the cylinders, so they're running dry now as they've warmed up a little. Finn opening the firebox door so that you can see into the fire. This is anthracite beans, which is small lumps of anthracite because it's a high temperature coal that burns with relatively little smoke, so it doesn't fur up the tubes. All the steam locos that we sell have several ways of getting water into the boiler. This is a hand pump that Finn's pumping that literally mechanically forces water in under pressure against the boiler pressure. You can see here the boiler pressures, the red line on the pressure gauge is 90 psi. That's the point at which the safety valves blow off. And you can see the water level bouncing in the gauge. There's a little valve to release the water in the gauge so that if it was right up the top or right down the bottom, you'd be able to blow it all out of the bottom valve and then allow it to fill again, so you'd be able to see where the level actually was. There's again Finn putting coal on the fire. On this loco there's a couple of injectors. That was Finn turning the water valve on, which allows water to flow through the injector and out of the overflow pipe. As Finn turns on the steam, the water gets faster and then it slows right down as the water is picked up by the injector and injected in against pressure to the boiler. And then when Finn trims back the water valve, he can reduce the overflowing water back to a drip or back to being dry. That just means it's injecting cleanly. The water level will go up, but as the cold water goes into the boiler, the pressure will come down because obviously the cold water hits the steam and condenses some of the steam and just reduces the pressure in the boiler. Turning the injector off is exactly the opposite process, so he turns the steam valve off and then turns the water valve to stop it dribbling water all over the floor. There's one on the right hand side of the engine as well. You saw the water valve go on, you can see the water overflowing. Finn will turn the steam on, the water gets faster and then gets picked up by the injector. This is the blower. It's a valve that when it opens blows a jet of steam up the chimney, forming a vacuum in the black part in the smoke box on the front of a steam loco, which draws the air through the fire at this end, making the fire burn really fiercely, which obviously boils more water and combats the effects of the cold water going into the boiler that we talked about earlier. This is the mechanical lubricator on this particular locomotive. There's steam oil in there, and you can see the surface of it's twitching a little because there's a little mechanical single-cylinder ratchet pump in there, which turns with every revolution of the wheel, pumping a little jet of oil into the hot cylinders to make sure that they stay lubricated. This is Finn winding it into reverse. You saw that he left the regulator open a little bit so that we could show that the locomotive worked well right the way back to virtually mid-gear, and then started to go backwards once he'd gone past centre. Finn here is raking out the fire through the ash pan and the grate at the bottom. You can see the ashes falling through the bottom as we dispose of the engine. When the fire's fully out, as you can see here, you can blow down the boiler, which is a valve that Finn's opening here. It was quite stiff, from about 40 pounds per square inch generally, and that blasts all of the concentrated salty water that's left in the boiler, blasts it all out of the bottom to make sure that you've got rid of any impurities and salts, so the boiler stays in good condition. There you go, just a little video to talk you around that loco.